Just a couple of guys, a couple of microphones, and a heck of a lot of know. It's Football on the Know with Jim and Joe.
What they say, it's not the X's and the O's, it's the Jimmies and the Joes.
All right, what's going on, everybody? Welcome to another episode of Football on the Know. I am Jim McPhee, of course, alongside of me is Mr. Joe DeCapita.
What's going on, Odos? Welcome back for another edition of Football on the Know show. We are ready to go here. If you want to help us out, you could do that very simply by heading over to YouTube for us. Hit that subscribe button. Hit the thumbs up. Don't forget to share it to everybody that you know.
Hashtag know-it-alls.
It does go a long way. We really do appreciate any of the support that you guys have shown us over the years. It's been awesome. Really do thank you guys out there. It does go a long way, so don't think that, oh, well, just by clicking a button, it's not going to really help them. No, it really does, because it allows YouTube, it makes YouTube realize in the algorithm that they use, like, hey, these guys are starting to get some traction here with people watching them. So lets them know that we deserve to be pushed up the ladder, so to speak, and get more noticed. Thanks, guys.
Get down on your knees and tell me you love me.
That's right,
That's
baby. Yeah, I mean, we were thinking of different topics to do tonight, and so we got a little late here. But the semifinalists of the Football Hall of Fame here for 2025 list has just been put out there. So we figured we do this every year, anyways, just about around this time, anyways. So we figured we go over this list and try and narrow it down or talk about it, see who's considered, and look. And who see who's worthy to make it this year. And there's a bunch out there that's been nominated for multiple years. There's some that for 6, 5, and a couple. So, and we were looking it up too to see how long you could actually be eligible. We found out that it was like 20 years.
20 years.
You can be actually eligible before you get sneak into that senior area, if you might even be considered as a senior.
After 20, after 20 years. Then it has to go to a senior vote. And they rarely use those.
Right.
So, like, I know that a couple of coaches have gotten in because of a senior vote because it was after 20 years. Then they got in the Hall of Fame. But it's not a common thing. So, I would say after 10 years, things aren't looking good for you. You know what I mean? In terms of making it to the Hall. But there's so much talent. I mean, that's the thing is, like, there's a lot of guys that deserve to be in the conversation and might even deserve to be in the Hall. You also could make the argument that there's some guys in the Hall of Fame that really don't deserve to be there, but they are. So, but yeah, we're going to try to figure this thing out. I don't think we're going to be very successful, but we're going to try.
Yeah, at least it might drum up some conversations and things like that. So here we go. Let's get into it. Here's the list even right now that you can kind of see. Yeah, Eric Allen's at the top here, at least in this list here. I automatically for him, I think he was a good player, but I mean, I don't think he gets in, at least after, especially being nominated 5 times. I don't know. I don't think so. I thought he was okay, but I mean, for me, I don't remember a whole lot with him, back in the late 80s, early 90s. I do remember him as a player, but nothing like sometimes for all Hall of Famers and these other positions, like I needed somebody to kind of like knock my socks off, when you heard about some of these people. Ronnie Lott, you knew him and what he did and things like that and what kind of impact he had. Eric Allen, I think, was good, but I don't know, to the extent of impact here. And that's what I think is tough for me with some of these corners and things like that, defensive players.
Well, the problem with the corners and stuff is they're mixed in with the safeties, which I think I get it. They're defensive back, but it's kind of like a mixed bag when you get with safeties and corners because they're a little bit different, position between each other. One will definitely have a lot more tackles than the other. If they stand out more, like a safety, if it stands out more, it's usually a coverage type safety. So a little bit different, but in the end, like I just feel like it makes it more difficult because you have them classified as DB. Mm-hmm. So there's safeties and there's an awful lot of corners to try to sift through, but it is pretty intense when you look at the list. It is nutty.
Right. And I mean, I don't know if you're agreeing with me or not, but I think moving on from him, Jared Allen, I think there's a guy that we've also debated for the past 5 times. I think that he's been named a semifinalist. And I think he's done enough to get in again. I mean, yes, he's played for a few different teams, but I mean, when he was there with the Vikings, I mean, I think that was his best years there, and he kind of hit his stride. And I don't know. I think he's got to be considered. I don't know where he lays with some of the guys that are already in, where there was stats or with like tackles and sacks. But again, when I was younger and watching him play, I think he was one of those guys that was one of those key players on that defense.
Yeah, and that name, a lot of people that got to see him play, he was like one of the best pass rushers at the time out there. Like, he was on the Chiefs. He played at the latter part of his career, played for the Vikings, and just wreaked havoc in the backfield. It was just sacks galore, creating pressure, stopping the run. He was a do-it-all type of player and did it at a very high level. And I really do think, like, I want to pull up what his stats were based against some of the Hall of Fame players that are already in the Hall.
Right now, he's got 136 sacks, right underneath Richard Dent, Jason Taylor, Michael Strahan right above them.
Yeah, so he's in the top
right
15.
around there. Yeah, right. Yep. And he's right before Carl Eller and who's in, and John Abraham, who is not. So I mean, that's kind of your conversation, your neighborhood that he's in. Everybody in front of him, all are in the Hall of Fame. Every single player in the sack category is in the Hall of Fame, except for him. He's got a little niche in there. So if he can make it in there, so now all the way up from them on to Carl Eller would be in the Hall of Fame, and then John Abraham's kind of that guy out of there. I mean, this is what kind of guy he was, though. I think. I mean, knew him as that, and you saw him
a dominating player.
Chris Dolman too was there too. So you saw that defense, together, and I think he was one of those dominating players at the time.
Yeah, he definitely was.
All right, so Willie Anderson, Joe. What do you think about Willie Anderson now for the Cincinnati Bengals, Baltimore Ravens for a little bit here in 2008?
Amazing player. Like all the offensive linemen that are actually due up should get in the Hall of Fame.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe not all of it at this point in time, like they all get in, but they all deserve to be in the Hall at some point or another. And there's no exception to Willie Anderson. Willie Anderson, one of the best tackles, in the game when he was playing. He was hands down, like, you couldn't go through him. You couldn't get around him. He was just a dominating figure, a dominating tackle. So, to me, that's just not even much of a conversation. He deserves to be in there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think it's tough sometimes with these offensive linemen. You see sometimes they let them go a few different times, and then some guys, they let in, kind of earlier. They kind of sneak in there. They let them go a few years, and then like, all right, let's throw him in there. So Willie Anderson on his 5th. Who knows if it's his time? But I think what sucks for some guys like that, though, too, again, when you're looking at those offensive linemen, is you see some of these first timers come in, especially with these fresh faces that we know, and how dominating some of these guys were. And now you look at these semifinalists, and you and I were talking about it before we went live. I mean, there's 25 of them, and they got to narrow them down to 15 here.
It's insane.
And that's going to be tough for anybody here.
It's just insane.
Where do you skimp out? You know what I mean? And there's a debate, I think, for every single person here.
100%.
So then that brings me to Anquan Bolden. And again, I think he was a good player. He's been a semifinalist 4 times. I think he's always been that a number 2 wide receiver on every team. You know what I mean? I never really considered him a number 1, even when he was with the Ravens. In San Francisco, he played pretty well. But he was basically known as the other side with Larry Fitzgerald here. And when they made that run for the Super Bowl, physical player, and very good still. But I don't know if I really consider Anquan Bolden a Hall of Famer at my end, at least.
I mean, I think he is a Hall of Famer. I mean, he's top 15 in receiving yards. He's top 20 or 25. I say top 25 in touchdowns caught in all-time history. Like that's something impressive. And the fact that he was so dominating in his prime, nobody could stop him. He was such a physical wide receiver that corners just got pushed around. Like they just couldn't do anything to the guy. The guy utilized his body extremely well, high pointed the ball, just boxed out the corners with ease, and would not be afraid to go over the middle and get that ball, because who's going to hit him? The guy who's like he's twice the size of. So to me, Anquan Bolden was a dominating figure for quite some time in football, and I definitely think he deserves to be in the Hall for sure.
All right, we got Jari Evans. Man, yeah, that's even going back a little bit here. I remember him back with the Saints and even the Packers here.
10 years with the Saints.
Again, it's tough again for me. It's always hard to gauge guards and tackles and things for the offensive line too. Again, because even for some of the stats to try and look at, they don't exactly track them very well.
No, they don't do stats for offensive linemen.
So it's hard to see. So unless you really visualized or got to witness
Watch
some of these
play.
things, especially in the moment, it's tough. Even when you go back and look at highlights, everybody looks good on highlights and things like that. But I mean, it's tough for to kind of look back and see what you might have seen out of these players.
Yeah, I mean, it's very easy. If they keep stats for everybody else, they might as well just keep stats for offensive linemen.
Mm-hmm.
Like that way you can actually have a track record of pancake blocks, pressures given up, penalties,
it was even late before they started, tracking pancake blocks. You know what I mean?
Anything. It's the same thing as a receiver catching the ball. Mm-hmm. Everybody, does that. Like, the offensive linemen deserve to have stats of their own that you could stack up against each other and be like, okay, this guy was better than this guy, or at least have that conversation, that healthy conversation about, well, both their stats are similar. Who do you think was more dominant, at their time in the NFL? And it sucks for guys like this that if you haven't watched these guys play, then you have no say. You don't.
Right.
You have to have watched these guys play to really appreciate just how good they were as offensive linemen. And so far on this list, all these guys were dominating. They dominated their positions when they were playing. And unfortunately, there still are no stats for these guys.
Yeah.
It's so easy to you keep track of all these other things with receivers, with quarterbacks and whatnot, and they got all kinds of categories. But offensive lineman doesn't take much. You can keep track of the penalties, false starts, holding calls. Like I said, pancakes, pressures given up. Like, all of that can come into a factor to where you can figure out how good, at least statistically, that player was, and then go from there.
Jawan Taylor is nowhere near going to be a Hall of Famer then, Joe, if you're talking about, false starts and things like that.
No, we know that for a fact. In fact, I'm pretty upset that you brought his name up when we're talking about the Hall of Fame. That dude has no hope. Oh, Marcus Barker's in the house. He goes, Steelers money line. What up, Joe? I hope all is well. Thanks, bro. Everything is good. Good to hear from you. Welcome to the show, brother. Steeler fan. Steeler Nation is in the house right now.
All right. So what is
there?
Why don't we just jump right to that then? Why don't we just go right to the Steeler that's nominated right now? And,
Hines Ward?
Well, a couple of them.
James
Hines
Harrison?
Ward, James Harrison. What do you think about Hines Ward and James Harrison right now as semifinalists? Do you think, as even a fan, or if you're partial to the team, or you could be separated from your team and things like that, and look
Right.
at a guy and not have the black and gold tinted
Right.
glasses on? So what do you think about that?
So-
Joe and I were talking about it. And
Yeah. So Hines Ward, in terms of receiving yards, he's like top 30 all time with receiving yards. When it gets to touchdowns, I think he jumps up a little bit here, because that's kind of what was his bread and butter was the red zone. Yeah, he jumps way up. He's in the top 15 with 85 touchdowns all time. So it's like, this is a interesting player to have a conversation about, because did he rack up yards? Yes, he racked up yards, but not crazy like some other receivers. But he was such a physical presence on the football field. He was a possession receiver. They don't make them like that anymore. That durable, that tough, with like Hines Ward. I mean, he was just a dominating type of player over the middle of the football, or over the middle of the field.
Mm-hmm.
So with Hines Ward, to me, when you look at touchdowns, you're like, oh, absolutely, Hall of Fame level. The yards, you could make the case that, not that impressive.
Mm-hmm.
Even if you went to like receptions, Hines Ward is right there with 1,000 receptions. He's in the top 15. So you could have a case for or against if you wanted to, based on how you want to argue your point. Does he deserve to be in? Yes. Does he not deserve to be in because was he really like a super big playmaker? You could say maybe not. You could say that. You could argue that. But all these guys that they have on this finalist list, that's what the whole argument is who deserves to get in now.
Yeah.
Hines Ward for me, because this will be his 9th time in the conversation. 9th time he's been in the conversation. And when you're put up against other players like this list is crazy, by the way. Every year it seems to be like this. But will he possibly miss another year just because of these other guys that he's going to be going up against? I'm afraid that he might be. Yeah, Marcus Parker also brings up his blocking was second to none. It really was.
For Hines Ward?
Hines Ward, of course.
Yeah.
Because he would freaking drive guys back 5-10 yards just to create a hole for those running backs. Like, yeah, he was a dominating figure, physical guy, tough guy. Like we said, like they don't make them like this anymore. But you could make the argument for or against.
Yeah. I mean, I see them making the argument for him again. 13 years as a starter in the league. Again,
long career.
Kind of, right. And being kind of that go-to guy, too, for Roethlisberger and things. So I mean, it's tough because he was a veteran
really
for a while, but being there 9 years. Is that enough for him to get in? And maybe that's what people have debated for so long. He's been nominated that many times, and they're like, yeah, he was good. He was there, so that's kind of borderline. But 9 years, now maybe he's got his time to go in. He's sat long enough maybe that he's potentially in there. But like I said, when you do that,
I don't think
though,
it's going to, though. When you look at the list that he has to go up
that's
against.
what I was just going to say. When you have
That's
a list,
the crazy
list
part.
gets harder as that happens. And that's when you kind of squeak out. And for me, again, I remember him as a player, and I remember liking how he played and things like that.
I loved how he played.
But ultimately, again, I don't know if he's exactly that Hall of Famer guy. You know what I mean? An excellent player that just doesn't
Excellent
put it.
player.
And that's what sucks is when you talk Hall of Fame and you talk about players that you're not demeaning
people
on how
think,
bad they were.
People think that you're like, oh, well, you're bashing him and
Yeah.
you're not going to let him in the hall. Well, no, I'm not saying that the dude doesn't deserve to be there.
Right.
Like, you can make the case for it, but at the same time, when you have to stack the chips up against these other guys that are coming in, some guys are first-time finalists. Other guys have been there a few years, but they're all really good. They're that good to where guys like, it's just sad to see like guys like him that he keeps sliding. He just keeps sliding year after year. You know what I mean? He's in the conversation, but is he gonna make it this year? Again, this list is pretty impressive. It's going to be very, very difficult.
Yeah. So Harrison, what do you think, James Harrison here,
Mr.
It's
Harrison.
been tough with him because again, this is his third time being nominated as a semifinalist. Most known again as a Pittsburgh Steeler here, but did have a stint with the Bengals and then the Patriots. Had one last run with the Patriots and kind of rejuvenated his career a little bit when he was there with the Patriots. Like you started to see flashes of his old self for a sense.
Where's Mr.
Small a little bit, but not a whole
What
lot.
do they categorize him
He's
as?
a linebacker on here. So
Is he
but
outside
I
or
don't know
inside?
exactly when we're looking at Pro Football Reference, if they would consider him an inside or an outside. I would have figured probably outside, right?
Oh, here he is. Yeah, he's outside. He's outside.
Yeah.
So outside, I mean, let's just say that he was there to sack the quarterback. That's what he's known for. So he's in the top 15 all-time sacks. So I mean that's really good company right there. Based on sacks for sure. When it comes to, let's go like overall tackles. Where does he fall here? He might have dropped a little bit. See, because like I try to look at how many tackles are involved in the sacks is an easy stat to look up, but when you to become an all around player, like a playmaking type of guy, you should be in a lot of these categories, at least in the he's way down.
Yeah.
I mean, we're talking
Well,
he drops for overall tackles. Like he drops like almost just out of the top 30.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So,
I think some of these guys, though, too, when you look at some of these, I mean, are they going to base Hall of Famers off of sacks, strictly and things like that? Or
it's not strictly sacks, no.
Is it tackles? Because even as we're looking
No,
at,
everything.
the stats even right now, you see the difference between, because we're looking at generated potential Hall of Famers, but then mixed with Hall of Famers.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a sprinkle of Hall of Famers. It's not exactly like a dominating bunch of guys that are right all in the Hall of Fame, at least.
That's
This,
why.
you know what I mean?
That's why for me,
Isn't
if
that
they're in
nuts?
the top 20 of the conversation, they deserve to be in the Hall. But they got to be consistently in all categories that for their position.
Mm-hmm.
That's to me, that's what screams Hall of Famer. Now, when it comes to tackles, he doesn't have as many as you would like him to have to like kind of be easily thrown in there. Sacks, he's definitely deserving of being in the Hall. Tackles for loss. That's another stat like that you can almost kind of say like, pressures and the tackles behind the line of scrimmage, like that all comes into the conversation where he's in the top 10 of that category.
Mm-hmm.
He lived in the backfield quite often. And you see that reflection of the amount of sacks that he has, tackles for loss. He had, crazy amount. So it's like, I think for him, and he had 8 interceptions as a linebacker / pass rusher off the edge. So that's pretty impressive there too. So I mean, I would say that Harrison. I would say this: out of the 2 Steelers, I think James Harrison deserves to be in the Hall more than Hines Ward.
Yeah.
In my opinion. So
I would say that
if
too as
you're
well.
gonna pick between those two, I would say Harrison deserves to be in. But as we're gonna go further down this list, you're gonna see that it's not that clear cut and dry.
Right, but I think even with the position, it's very tough and not clear cut and dry. Some guys, like they got Ray Lewis there, Zach Thomas, Brian Urlacher are right there in the Hall of Fame. But then you've got really good players here, and some that aren't for consideration yet too, like Bobby Wagner eventually.
There's a lot of them.
KJ Wright, but then there's a lot of good players here that didn't make it to the Hall of Fame yet. So I mean, it's crazy that maybe that the outside linebacker position isn't really considered very deep when it comes down to finalists.
But James Harrison wasn't an outside linebacker.
Yeah,
Let's be
Yeah,
honest.
I get it there.
Let's be honest. He was a pass rusher.
Right, yes.
That's what he was.
Yeah. They should change it just to edge rusher, pass rusher.
So, I mean, you could label it edge, pass rusher. You could even say the end because that's kind of more the role he fit.
Yeah.
Now, he played in the position of linebacker based on the scheme that the Steelers use.
Yes.
But he's a D end. He's a pass rusher. That's really what he is. So you see him for what he is and what he was able to accomplish. Now, he had a really good career. So it's like, again, do I think he should be in there? Yeah, probably. You could make the case for it that he deserves to be in there, but at the same time, too, it's going to get harder every year that he doesn't get in because it's just like when you look at guys that are ahead of him right now, guys that you just said are not in the Hall yet: Terrell Suggs, Von Miller, Levante David, Khalil Mack, Justin Houston, Clay Matthews. You get my point. And this is before we even get to Harrison. Those guys haven't even been nominated yet because they got to have 5 years after they retire out of the NFL before they can be considered. Now, if you're naming all those names off and you're like, wow, look at their stats. They are better than Harrison's. Now, is that I wonder if that comes into effect for the committee in terms of voting. Do they look ahead at all based on the finalists this year and then say, oh, well, next year, if we don't get Harrison in this year, then next year, here's the crop that's coming out next year. And I don't think he makes it in next year either. Like, I wonder if that's part of the conversation too, looking farther ahead than just this year too. That would be interesting to ask somebody on that committee if they have any conversations like that. But yeah, I mean, if you're gonna, bottom line, you could argue your way about Harrison that deserves to be in there. But again, you have to. We mention all the time, like, were you blown away by this player? Like, hands down, when you hear his name, like, I know a lot of people hear TJ Watt, and they're like, dude's freaking amazing. He's definitely a first ballot Hall of Famer right now. Like, you know what I mean? Like, you hear some people's names, and you're like, oh, yeah, that dude was dominating, was amazing. James Harrison was a huge fan favorite, and rightfully so. Very physical, tough. He carried that steel curtain of armor on him. Like, he bled Steeler. You know what I mean?
Yep.
And his production is there, but it's not at such an impressive level where you're just like, you hear James Harrison, you're like, bona fide, hands down, most dominating player in the league in his prime. There was always that. So I mean, I don't know. He's kind of hit or miss with me. I think he has the stats where you can argue him in, but again, we also got to take into account that you got the rest of these players on this list that we're going to argue for too.
All right. Looks like we've got some more comments out there, Joe.
He said, Marcus said, well said. He goes, Danny Shawman in the house said Harrison had one of the greatest plays ever. Super Bowl interception for touchdown, 100 yards against the Arizona Cardinals.
I remember that.
I was so devastated. I was devastated in that game because I was rooting so hard for the Cardinals to win a Super Bowl with Larry Fitzgerald there. It was just like, oh, man. And then they let that happen. That changed the whole dynamic. The rest after halftime, the Cardinals were just a shell of themselves. They didn't even know what happened. Like it was just
that was like the pivotal moment.
That definitely
just
was.
It all. Because I mean, and that's what sucks is like, I mean, I see it all the time now because I'm a Giants fan, but you get down to the red zone right there. You're almost guaranteed points, you would think. You know, so you're there for the touchdown or maybe a field goal, and it goes the opposite way for a touchdown for the other team. So that is a horrible moment here. And I think it's one of those Super Bowl moments that will be forever live in time.
Right. That's a good one, Dan. That's a good one.
Absolutely. So let's get to Antonio Gates here. Antonio Gates.
Mr. Gates.
He's been nominated 2 times. And
he's been up twice.
Yeah, I don't know why he's not in yet.
I thought he was getting in last year.
Yeah, because if you look at it right now, he is 4th in receptions. He is 3rd in yardage and 1st in touchdowns for tight ends. I mean,
all time. That's
right
all
now.
time. That's
like,
not his last year or whatever. Like, that's all time.
Right.
That is insane.
Insane.
To think about, how is this guy not in the Hall? Like, okay, we talk about these guys like this, right? That are like, oh my God, you hear his name. Gates is one of those guys where you're like, hands down, deserves to be in the Hall.
Right.
Like, there's no question about it. Even if you're a Raiders fan and you hated the Chargers then because Gates would kill you.
Yep.
Even Raider fans would be like, yeah, that dude's definitely in the Hall. Like, there's no doubt about it. So we don't even have to spend much time on Gates. It's just put him in.
Right, and that's with 164 less games than Tony Gonzalez.
I know, right?
And he's got more touchdowns than Tony Gonzalez and just about 3,500 less yardage.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, so he's played less time than Tony Gonzalez has. And he was one of those guys that, I think he was kind of one of them that, I mean, we know about Ditka and what he did for tight ends and for the game, though, too. But before you had your Travis Kelce and things like that, you had Tony Gonzalez and you had Antonio Gates. Those were the 2 tight end stars at the time, like sort of like basketball player hybrid tight ends, the receiving tight end. These guys were it, especially for the Chargers here and Phillip Rivers at the time. Antonio Gates was his go-to guy, and every now and then it was Vincent Jackson, before he had ended up leaving and going to Tampa Bay. But again, I mean, that's I think a no-brainer here, and why they're waiting, a couple of years here. Again, maybe it is some of the people that are in, but I know you and I had talked about some of the guys that made it last year that kind of were just like, and you couldn't put Antonio Gates in, like, the Willis, right? Patrick Willis. You're like, he didn't have a lot of play time, and he made it in, but wow,
And we did learn that you don't have to rush any of these first ballot guys in because you have like at least 20 years to get
20
it.
years. We learned 20 years.
I mean,
so I guess that's
the
argument. Time, right?
The argument we had about Patrick Willis wasn't that he didn't deserve to be in the Hall. Of course he does, but the issue is when you have a short career
Right.
where he had a excellent career in a short amount of time for the NFL, then was done with it, moved on. Luke Kuechly, he only played 7 years, and I know we say only 7, but typically you want to see at least 10, maybe 11. To give yourself an ample amount of production across the board and be like, yeah, not only was I great, I was great for this long. So you want to see that kind of longevity in a player to be put in the Hall. So that was kind of it. That was a sticking point. Not that we didn't think he deserved to be, but first ballot, had a short career. Like, you could have waited. You could have waited maybe a year, maybe 2. But then there's guys that are coming up here now that also have short careers.
Right, and then we'll just touch on here while you're there, and you're talking about Luke Kuechly.
Mr. Lukey.
There he is. Times as a semifinalist, 1, and that was for this time, I think, right? It would have to be his first time here. So Luke Kuechly.
Yeah, it's his first time.
Again, great player, pretty dominating here at that position, for the Carolina Panthers. Did leave the game early. He has played in a Super Bowl. Just came up short in that one. But again, where do you place this guy? Like, again, you see his overall, I guess, career for what it was. Yes, he was good. He was dominating. So I think he has the potential to get in, but just I don't think first ballot, a Hall of Famer again. Because I think when you talk about the shortage of career, I guess, I think that's kind of got to be not the one that puts you in first, the one that kind of sets you back a little bit. Like, oh, he had a short playing time, so I don't think he gets it now, but maybe a little bit after this, because there's a lot of these other guys that, they stayed healthy, or they just had a long career and did well, that, had strung on. They've had some high times. They've had some low times. Look at Aaron Rodgers. Aaron Rodgers, top of the game in QBR and, yardage, touchdowns. And now this year looks like garbage out there for the Jets. You know what I mean? So it's what's left in your last, taste in your mouth, I guess, for some players.
Yeah, right.
So, Kuechly, are you on the same thing? Like, not this year, but, eventually? Or even you're just thinking that he doesn't?
I loved Luke Kuechly as a player. Like, he was just amazing. Much like Patrick Willis. I loved Willis. And I feel the same way. I just feel like you need to have that longevity as a career to show more consistency, like on a long-term basis, to give you that kind of little last boost to be considered a first ballot. That's all. Like, it's not that I don't think Luke Kuechly doesn't belong in the Hall. I do think he does, but having such a short career, it's difficult for me anyways to just put that guy in. You know what I mean? Because he had that short career, just throw him in the Hall of Fame, even though he was dominating in his prime. But you didn't get to see, could he do it for the long haul? So like a lot of these athletes, a lot of these players have been over 10 years, 11 years, 12 years, 13 years, sometimes rare cases above that. And I would just like to see, a little bit longer of a track record for some of these guys, but not to say he doesn't deserve it, but I think maybe the first year ballot thing can wait.
Right, because I think even what's tough with that, too, is because when you try and track some of these stats, you look at sacks, you look at, to count tackles, tackle for loss. He's not exactly up there for some of those just because of, having that short career, though, too.
Right,
so
and that goes against you because you're not, like, we kind of preach on this show about how there should be, to be considered a Hall of Fame, you should reach a certain threshold. Not this 20-year window where you get all the time in the world to possibly be voted in as a Hall of Famer, but there should be a threshold that you have to meet, like almost like a requirement. You have to have over this many yards. You have to have this many sacks. You have to have this many pass defense or yards or whatever the case may be to be considered. You know what I mean? And then you go from there. But again, this also can fight against Luke Kuechly. Is the fact that, he was dominant for 6 years. His 7th year, not so, ended up getting injured, left the game. And now, if he stayed 10 years, maybe he racks those numbers up to be so respectable to the point where He's in the top 15, top 10 conversation. Every category is a linebacker. Now it's a shoe-in. But because he has a shorter career, not as much time to rack up stats, then you try to compare them against other greats, and you're like, well, I don't know. Do we put him in because he was a good player, or do we put him in because we were trying to calculate what he would have if he was in there for 10 years? You know what I mean? Like, try to make something up just to get him in. So that it's a difficult conversation for those guys.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, so how about let's look at Rodney Harrison now too, because I was
Mr. Rodney.
I was looking at some of even his stats here too, and I think it's open for a little bit of a debate here too, because like you said, the list that we're looking at right now is made by Pro Football Reference, and what they do is they do track it by Hall of Famer stat. They give it a number of things, and they put these guys in the conversation here with Hall of Famers and stuff in the list.
And active players.
And active players. They mix them kind of in here. And he has been in like the top 15 to 20 area, just under Brian Dawkins. Actually had 920 tackles. And Brian Dawkins had 911, and he's been up there in that aspect. So I mean, he's debating, and it's out of DBs. Like you said, they group them together. It's not just safety or not just corner.
Well, here's the part
up
too.
There all together, but as looking at INTs though, he's nowhere near the top.
The part about Rodney Harrison is very different because in his heyday, the type of safety he was considered a in the box safety. He's not any of these kind of safeties nowadays that can cover a large range of field, that can cover man to man and play zone and do everything well. Rodney Harrison was a in the box safety. He was down in the box with the linebackers. He would blitz a lot. That's why he leads all time list as a defensive back in sacks. That's kind of where that was his home, is stopping the run, rushing the quarterback. And at times when he was asked to cover, you look at past defense, he's like not on the list like forever. It's a mile long until you see his name. Interceptions, he's not really high on the list. No. He's farther down. So it's like when it comes to coverage, that's not what Rodney Harrison did. They didn't ask him to do that much.
Right.
But really what he was there for is stopping the run and rushing the quarterback. And because of that, I would argue that Harrison does not deserve to be in the Hall, because even though he's all-time in sacks, that's a great stat to have as a defensive back, right? But that's really the only major dominating thing that he did. When you're comparing them with corners and safeties and whatnot, his limitations as a coverage guy is what's going to bite him in the end. Like I don't think he's going to be able to get in the Hall just because of that. Now, he was a Patriot. He won championships because he was a Patriot.
Yep.
We all know that is part of the conversation. Does he get in because he's won a few Super Bowls? You know what I mean? That to me, and I think you feel the same way, Jim, that the Super Bowl category, they actually have a category.
Yeah, they do.
For the Hall of Fame, how many championships you won.
Yeah.
I don't think that should take such high value in whether you get in or not because you happen to win 2, 3, whatever championships in your career.
Yep.
That shouldn't dictate whether you kind of jump over the hurdle and get in the Hall. In fact, that to me, that's just a team stat. Like you all helped each other get to that level, win a championship. Amazing, right? It's not an individual stat like they try to make it out to be. So even if with that being said, I just don't think Harrison deserves to be in the Hall.
Right, and that's the same thing even with Pro Bowls. But I think Pro Bowls, I think if you gauge, there's got to be an asterisk, I think, with Pro Bowls again.
Well, the Pro Bowls shouldn't count either.
Well, I know. Well, I think to a certain extent, like a certain time frame, because back when they were actually voted in by real, people that are, based off
there
of
was
what
no
they
fan voting then.
Played, there was no fan exactly.
There was a committee,
so I think
and that's
there
it.
should be an asterisk between there because
right.
I think that's a difference. But then even the fact that he only made 2, I think has something to be said though too as well. And if you talk about chips, we all know that the Patriots lost because he wasn't able to pull off that, knocking the ball out against David Tyree either. So he potentially could have had 3 chips right there. So when you are a factor that actively leads to them losing the game, the championship there too. I think that's a little mark against you too. So
sure.
I'm more in a chance of, looking at him saying, oh yeah, maybe he actually was all right. He could be considered, as I was before, because I was ready to just say, no, absolutely not.
Right.
But maybe, again, 20 years is a long time, maybe potentially. I definitely not this year, though. And this is his 4th year being nominated. So, but I say no, not right now. All right, so Torrey Holt. Torrey Holt's been on this list probably the longest so far of all the guys here that are in the semifinalists.
No, Hines
right?
Ward.
No, Hines
Ward has 9.
Has 9. No, it's Torrey Holt's 11, Joe.
He's got
this
11?
This is 11th. Yes.
Really?
Yes. I think ever since we've been doing this show, we've been saying that when we do this type of show here too, we're like, Torrey Holt. Look at there's Torrey Holt.
We
again,
came
so.
after that, after he was already being
exactly
in the conversation.
Right. So I mean, it's just funny. So
we've been doing this for 7 years now.
8 years. So now he's been there every single time.
Yeah.
And so again, member of the greatest show on turf. Very good player again. But again, I just don't know. And especially after this time, now you're creeping into seeing some of these other receivers come up. Now, he's there with Steve Smith and things like that. But you're going to get, your Larry Fitzgerald and all these other guys here. So, I mean, his time is ticking right now.
Yeah, I think the only thing that you could argue is the fact that he had a ton of yards.
Right, but that's what they were, right? They were the air raid type of offense.
Yeah, but you know what? He didn't have I feel like he just didn't have enough production in terms of touchdowns, like scoring. He's not anywhere close to the top 30 in touchdowns, receiving, receptions. He's also kind of top 20-ish, and then yards is kind of like the only like glowing stat that where he's kind of in that top 15 conversation. But like, man, I don't know.
He was always kind of second fiddle though to Isaac Bruce.
Isaac Bruce was the number 1 for sure. Torrey Holt was the number 2. In terms of receiving yards, he's kind of on that like outside edge of top 10. Like he's like high end top 15 with yards. So it's like yards wise, yes, Hall of Fame dude all the way. But as a wide receiver in its entirety, no. And I think that's going to be the thing that haunts him, and that's going to keep him out of the Hall of Fame, is the fact that he was a very good player, but he wasn't a all-around big-time playmaker. He was, like you said, like he was the number 2 option in that Rams, offense, that high-powered offense. But Isaac Bruce reaped a lot of the rewards. So, yeah, I would say that Holt might actually miss the Hall of Fame.
I think so. All right. So I think that brings us up to, one of the probably the juiciest parts here. That this is the sandwich, the meat in the middle of the sandwich here. It's Eli Manning.
Do it, Eli
Here you go.
Manning.
The only quarterback nominated to the semifinals. I know it's always a debate with a lot of people because they say, again, defense won them the championships that they had. They were only a 9-7 team. And, he looks funny, makes funny faces, So, I mean, a lot of different knocks on him and stuff like that. But overall, with stats, and I even bring up the fact that, okay, he was on a lot of teams that did play very well. And I don't think a lot of it was even due to him. And racked up the stats still, was able to get it there with a lot of, like, you name some of the key receivers that he even had for most of
Mario
his career.
Manningham.
You know what I mean? But yeah, for a few years here. But I'd say even at most, Amani Toomer.
Monty Toomer,
and do you think Amani Toomer is a Hall of Famer?
Ike Hilliard,
Ike Hilliard for a short time. Yeah, for a while, early on in his career. But, this is what we're talking about. I mean, nobody.
Any of those
really
names you guys blown away by?
Yeah. And Odell for a year or two. You know what I'm saying? And that's when Odell had some of his best years.
Yeah.
Yeah. So,
but yeah,
I think he's in automatically. I mean, right here. I mean, come on.
I know there's going to be a lot of haters about Eli Manning, but he does deserve to be in the Hall of Fame. And the first ballot to me makes a lot of sense for Eli Manning because he is just outside the top 10 all time in almost every category. And yes, okay, interceptions, he did throw a lot, but still, like he has all-time numbers in yards, all-time numbers in touchdowns, all-time numbers in completions, like just outside the top 10. So it's like if you're in that outside, even if you're outside the top 10, but it's all-time, like ever in the NFL, the dude deserves to be in the Hall of Fame. Like you cannot argue anything else other than him being inducted. Just you can't.
Yeah, right. I agree too as well. I mean, everybody else there, he's there. I mean, you can't deny that. And you're going to see some of these other guys, once they finish their careers coming up, they're going to be there as well.
True.
So moving on, Robert Mathis, again, he's been up for a few different times.
Yep.
Fourth year right now. Indianapolis Colts, remember him there on the opposite side of Dwight Freeney. And this is the thing, sometimes you get your A guy and your B guy that are right there, kind of your 1 and your 2. And Robert Mathis, I think he's very good. I think he's pretty close to deserving here. But he always had Dwight Freeney right there, though, too. So he's kind of overshadowed at times here, I think, on that defensive line.
He's top 20 in sacks all time. So, he did his thing.
He definitely did his thing. That's what I'm saying. I think he's strongly considered here.
For sure. And that's the thing, too, is like if you're going to argue, too, with Jared Allen and him, Jared Allen obviously takes the cake. He's above him. But in terms of sacks, he's top 20. In terms of tackles, that's kind of like where he falls off. Like, I feel like guys like him were under the radar, but they also didn't do I just feel like he was just a specialized pass rusher.
Right.
And because of his lighter stature at the time, he was just all full go for the quarterback and not so much on stopping the run.
Right. It's almost like, hey, there's quarterback, go get quarterback. Boom.
Yeah.
And then that's what he did. And he was very, very good at it. You know what I mean? But again, wasn't asked upon to be that run stuffer and things like that. He was just a major pass rusher.
Yeah, because
that's even why they have him.
Because even when I look at
hybrid.
tackles for loss, he's like borderline top 25
So
all
he's
time
around the 20s area type of deal, at least out of this list.
Right. So I mean, I don't know. I think I was hoping to see a little bit more better production than what I'm seeing. So like, I mean, honestly, like, I'm just gonna say that he might not get in the Hall of Fame because there's just better talent that's gonna warrant those spots.
All right, next we got Steve Smith, Joe, for the Carolina Panthers.
We
played a
talk
little bit for the Baltimore Ravens.
Yes. Yes.
Those years people don't want to really remember, though, I think. But I think when he was with the Carolina Panthers, I mean, he was at the top of the game here, too.
Oh, he was amazing.
He's another one of those guys, especially with some of the moves that he had. I mean, were outrageous. So
he was a sub 6 foot wide receiver, kind of shortish. A lot of people frowned upon short wide receivers back then. Didn't give him much clout, much chance to do anything. Carolina took a shot on him, and the dude played bigger than his size. Like, he played like he was a 6'4" wide receiver with blazing speed and immense physicality. Wasn't afraid to go over the middle of the football field. Caught just about everything. Sometimes you didn't think he was going to catch it, and somehow he came down with it. And he, in terms of yards, he's top 10. He's on the lower end of the top 10, but he's right up there all time with that stat. And then when you go to look at like touchdowns, because I feel like he was also like a deep threat for them. Like, as physical as he was a deep threat. But that's when you go to touchdowns, that's when he's kind of like just outside the top 30 or in the top 30 somewhere, where it's like in terms of touchdowns. When you go to we'll go to receptions here. Take a look to see. That's when he's he's back at the bottom, like almost like right at 10th spot in terms of receptions. So you can make the case for it. Like, I would say Steve Smith does deserve to be in the Hall of Fame. I mean, when you look at the all-time list, he's in the top 10 of yards. He does take a dip in terms of like touchdown scores. In that top 30 list. But receptions kind of brings him back up there. So, like, really, he was impactful, too. Because, like, I know we're talking about stats a lot and looking and trying to compare other Hall of Famers or guys that may be up for the Hall of Fame soon. But it's not all about stats. It's also you have had to have seen him play.
Right.
To
That's
where he was such a dominating type of player and really carried that Panthers team, on his back.
Well, I'll put it the question out there right now. How many people know who the quarterback was for the Carolina Panthers even before Cam Newton? You know what I mean? Can anybody name one? You know what I mean? I know I can a little bit here, but I mean, this is what he didn't have anybody great. You know what I mean? When they did go to the Super Bowl, it was with Jake Delhomme.
Yeah.
And does anybody know who Jake Delhomme is? And nobody did even then, and he had
He was an average
spark to have
quarterback.
a pretty good season. And they're like, whoa, look at this guy. And, and that was when they had, Fox as their coach at the time. That kind of sparked his career, kind of up and coming coach. And then he kind of fizzed out. But his whole career never really having anybody great throwing the ball. I think even when he was with Baltimore, I don't even think they had anybody there. Was it Kyle Bowler when he was there? I don't know. I don't think it wasn't Lamar. Those guys didn't get there yet. So I think it was
Kerry Collins was there.
Oh yeah, I was there with Carolina, but I'm thinking even when he was with Baltimore, I don't think he even had a great quarterback.
Oh, when
at
he was
that
with
time,
Baltimore?
Yeah. At his later of his career.
Did they have Kyler Bowler there?
That's what I'm saying. I'm thinking it might have been Kyle Bowler.
Oh, he was terrible.
Still, that's what I'm saying. I'm like, and when you have this amount of yardage and what you're doing here too, and when you see it with the eye test and what he was able to do as a shorter wide receiver, and he also returned punts at times too, Joe. So I mean, that isn't on this one right here, but overall, I think he's definitely got to be considered, especially when you look at Andre Johnson too, kind of in the same issue. I think he's a Hall of Famer, and he didn't have a lot of people helping him out here at the quarterback position too, but he was a pretty good wide receiver here. Always put up, top yardage season after season for what that team was. And Andre Johnson's in the Hall of Fame, so I think you definitely have to consider Steve Smith Sr.
100%.
All right. I think talk about the Baltimore Ravens here. Let's talk about Terrell Suggs here now too. Another guy who had a really long career. You thought he was going to, be a Baltimore Raven forever.
Yes, I definitely did.
Yeah. I mean, it was one more short year afterwards where he was with the Cardinals and then even the Kansas City Chiefs. But kind of overshadowed, I think, in a sense by Ray Lewis being there, but those guys were just right there together. They were a dominating defense, and you knew Ray Lewis, Terrell Suggs, always getting in the face of the quarterback.
Yep.
Nasty duo here.
Yeah.
I don't. This one, you're gonna have to look up the stats for me here. This is his first time here, but I know he's definitely got to be considered here. He was one of those
Suggs,
dominating players.
I mean, point blank, period. Suggs deserves to be in the Hall of Fame. And when you look at what he was, just a dominating figure, one of the best, edge guys, pass rushers, whatever you want to label him as. But just a guy who would just destroy offensive linemen and get into the backfield. Now, when you look at like what he had for sacks, he's top 3. He's third all time in sacks. When you get into tackles, just straight up tackles, he falls way down on the list. But tackles for loss, he's number 1. He's number 1 all time for tackles for loss. Sacks, he's dominating. That's what he was there for. He was there to blow up, disrupt the backfield, get to the quarterback, tackle the running back in the backfield, and he did his job extremely well. So Terrell Suggs, to me, is hands down deserves to be in the Hall, even though it's his first year, right? Up
first year.
Be inducted.
Yep.
He could be another first-year ballot and just insert him, and there's no arguments.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think so too. I mean, because again, you get to see him play. What kind of dominating force he was. The stats are there. I think it just checks all the boxes.
100%.
All right, here, Fred Taylor now. Fred Taylor is interesting for me.
Taylor.
I don't know, for some reason, too. There's a lot of people out there that are like, oh, Fred Taylor, amazing. You know
the name.
I get it. He was probably the best, running back that the Jacksonville Jaguars had, probably in franchise history. But, again, I mean, he was good, but it wasn't blowing the doors off for me. And there's something about him that I just don't see Hall of Famer status.
I'll tell you right now why you don't see it that way is because he had a hard time staying on the football field. Fred Taylor, in terms of like yards. If he stayed healthy, he could have done some real damage where we wouldn't even have questioned it. I mean, just straight up all-time yards, he's top 20. So, I mean, you definitely is Hall of Fame worthy in terms of just yards. When it comes to touchdowns, that's when he kind of falls down the list, you know, and into oblivion almost.
Yeah.
To where it's like those are like two critical things that you need as a running back. You need yards, you need touchdowns, you need people to remember you. And I'm not sure a lot of people, even during that time, remember who Fred Taylor really was, because he got injured quite often.
Yep.
He was banged up a lot in Jacksonville. And I think that's what hurt him, you know, pun intended. Even hurting his chances of getting into the Hall right now is because all he can really kind of depend on is like, oh, well, I have, top 20 all-time yards. You know, that's it. That's all I can say.
Yep.
So it's like not enough for me. You need everything. You just need everything in its entirety. And the fact that when you look at some of these Hall of Fame backs that are in there, it's a tough list to try to even come close to. So, yeah, I will say this. I don't think he's worthy of it. I don't think Fred Taylor should be in the Hall of Fame.
All right, Joe. Now we're looking at Earl Thomas, safety. He played for the Seattle Seahawks there.
I love me some Earl Thomas.
His first time here. He played with the Baltimore Ravens, 2019.
Seattle Seahawks is what he was known as.
Exactly.
You know,
yeah, he's part of that Legion of Boom.
Yep.
But I don't know. Stat-wise, he's not really near anywhere. You know, so that's what's kind of funny is because I remember him being a really dominant player when he was there with Seattle. But as far as, I don't know, he was injured a lot too, especially later on in his career.
Yeah.
So I don't know with Earl Thomas. Again, I think he was a really great player, but I just don't know about him being a Hall of Famer though.
Yeah, it's difficult too because he's a safety.
Right.
And you're trying to sift through corners and everything and trying to see like where he's at in the whole defensive backfield. But in terms of pass defense, not anywhere close.
Yeah.
You know,
it's not near a lot of these.
I know that he was a guy who in the seasons that the NFL, when he was playing in the NFL, there was this kind of unique window that Earl Thomas came in to where they were getting away from the in-the-box safety and going to what Earl Thomas was, where he has the physicality, can play in the box, but he also can cover and has the speed to drop back. And they were tinkering with those type of guys. So Earl Thomas, you know, as good of a career as he had, is it all-time worthy of being in the Hall of Fame? I'm just not seeing it right now. I loved the player.
Right.
I loved what he was able to do. It's not that he was a great player. Like he was a really good safety for the Seattle Seahawks.
Yeah.
But I'm not noticing anything because I'm also trying to look deeper since it is defensive backs in general. Like down the 30 range, the 40 range, and I'm just not seeing them pop up on anything.
Right.
So it's like guy had a good career, but not stat-wise. You know what I mean? I just don't know what the deal is here, but I'm not finding him. So I'm just going to say that Thomas, you know, he's out. As much as I wanted to put him in the Hall, there's better players that we can just put in there right now.
Yeah. All right, Joe, why don't you tell everybody, as you know, we're buttoning up the last couple here, where if you guys want to comment out here, tell us what you think about some of these players too, whether you think they're Hall of Famers or not.
Yeah, we want to hear from you guys out there too. Like I know you're chiming in. We had a few comments drop in and whatnot, but let us know what your feelings are, guys. We want to hear from you guys. You know, what doesn't matter what we're talking about, but give us your feedback. What do you think? Do you think you're for Earl Thomas getting in, out, or any of the other previous names that we've already mentioned?
All right, Adam Vinatieri, his first year up for it, and he's a semifinalist just like that. New England Patriots, we know that, multiple championships. Colts did pretty decent early on and then started to trail off. Again, I mean, for kickers, I think he's got to be up top for all-time point leaders, at least near there, right?
This is just funny because the kickers have their own They have their own list.
Right.
So
right. Yeah, you should, right?
but offensive linemen don't. But we got kickers.
Right.
Adam Vinatieri, let's see, field goals made. He's number one all time. You know, field goals attempted. He's number one all time. Let's see, extra points made. Number one all time. Extra points attempted. You can guess. Number one all time.
So there you go. He's
so
a
I think
lock. So
I think we've done enough research to just say he's a shoe-in. He definitely is a first-time ballot guy. You just throw him in the finals and let it be known. Adam Vinatieri, you are cemented.
For me, it's I just don't know if they decide it that way though, because these got to be in, but do they do that with kickers again, or will they hold him back because he's a kicker?
Look at it this way. Let me go. Let me do this. Their own measurement.
I'm trying to remember where
their own measurement. He's number 2 all time as a kicker.
Oh, there you go.
So using their metrics and going with the stats, you can't keep this guy out of the Hall of Fame. You just can't. He was the most, or at least one of the most dominating kickers all time. Not just because he was with the Patriots or he had a great career also with the Colts, but all time the dude was a nasty kicker. Got the job done all the time.
Yeah, I believe. I mean, he definitely gets in. I just don't know if they hold him back this year or not, though. I would like to see.
I don't see how you can. How can you argue that?
All right, we already talked about Hines Ward. Ricky Waters, running back. He was with the San Francisco 49ers.
I'm going to say no on this one right off the cuff.
Yeah, I think it's same thing, too. It's like I remember Ricky Waters. He was pretty good for a little while. Yep. But, again, like I said, I'm looking for that dominant player, that guy that kind of stands out. And if you look at, put it right now, let's say Ricky Waters in his prime, in his time, and then you got even Christian McCaffrey right now. For me, I'm going Christian McCaffrey before Ricky Waters. I don't know about you, Joe. But.
Christian McCaffrey, I mean, without a doubt. Christian McCaffrey's a dominating player. That's almost
different types of players.
I don't think that's a fair.
But I'm just saying where they are and who they are in a running back, and going for.
I don't think that's a fair assessment with McCaffrey versus Ricky Waters.
Let's put it this way: if you tried to put Ricky Waters at his height, I guess in his career, this guy is to this guy as Ricky Waters is to. You know what I mean? Like, what would do in his equivalent? What do you think Ricky Waters would kind of be at this point, too?
Steven Jackson.
Okay.
Steven Jackson to me was a really good running back, but guy who was also injured and he was okay. Like he was average. Some people might argue above average or whatever, and that's kind of how I view Ricky Waters. I think he's good, but he's nothing stellar. He's nothing like, oh my God, he deserves to be in the Hall of Fame because of what he was able to do. Like you look at what he was able to do. He's he's damn near top 30 at the bottom end of it in terms of just yards all time.
Yeah.
Attempts, if you look up attempts and try to find his name, that's where, he's still in the, you could argue top 25 there with attempts. Touchdowns, Ricky Waters is top 30. So all time, he's in the conversation. I'll say I don't think he gets in, especially this year. I don't know. Honestly, okay, here you go. Perfect thing. So I just noticed this. On the Hall of Fame's list here, they have average Hall of Fame running back, and that is the threshold. He's well below that. So I'm just going to say that no, he's not going to get in. He's below that in every category, and to me, that's not good enough. You have to be at least above the average stat mark for the Hall of Fame to be considered. So that's a no for me.
Yeah. Yep. And I was looking at even some of the names there, and again, another 49er, Frank Gore is right there, and he's not in the Hall of Fame yet.
Not yet, but he will be. We got to wait until he gets that 5-year
until he's
Threshold.
eligible here.
And
So,
then
yeah,
we'll
I'm
have
in
the
agreement with you on
same
that one.
we'll have the same
The same
conversation about
conversation? I
Ricky
don't know.
Waters versus Frank Gore, and we're just gonna say Frank Gore all
Frank Gore
day.
all day, yes.
So he misses again.
All right, Reggie Wayne is there for the last couple of seasons here. Now his sixth semifinalist.
Mr. Wayne.
I've been up and down on Reggie Wayne. I've
Yeah.
been saying no, he doesn't. Then I've said yes, he does, and then he hasn't yet. So
I don't know how. I mean,
it's
honestly,
weird
Reggie Wayne
me.
is a good, really good player for me.
Yeah, he's a
Like
good
I
player.
think he's easily top 10 in receptions, yards. He's top 10 in yards, touchdowns. Let's see where he is in touchdowns. He is touchdowns, kind of where he drops a little bit. Top 20.
Yeah.
He's top 20 in touchdowns. So I mean, like all time, this dude is up in that conversation of a top 10 all time wide receiver. Maybe not in the red zone, but he's definitely in receptions and yards. To me, it's just not much of a question. He deserves to be in there.
Yeah, and I think what maybe clouds me sometimes is
He's a Colt. Is that what it was?
Maybe.
Maybe.
And then your second fiddle to Marvin Harrison, but then even after that, he was the number one after Harrison moves on. Peyton Manning was there with him for a little bit. Then you have Andrew Luck that was there with him, and that also helps out with that. But
I mean, we could make that
yeah,
case
like I
with
said,
every
he's good.
receiver,
Yeah, I
number
know,
one
I
receiver.
know, but that's what some of these ones that have been hanging out there, debatable and things. But
I don't think Reggie Wayne's debatable. I think he deserves
his
to be in
stats
there.
are there. So yeah, I get you there. So I think he's waited long enough, so he potentially could make it in here with some of these other players that are kind of like, Ricky Waters, I don't think is, Hines Ward, I don't think is, Fred Taylor, I don't think is. So as we're knocking some of these down,
Yeah.
we're getting close, I think, to our top 15.
We
already,
are
Joe.
actually
I think
we-
because you know what I mean. I think we're already at 20 something. So we're 2018 somewhere around there. So covering the last couple here.
Yeah.
Let's go with the offensive linemen all together. All
Okay.
right, and Richmond Webb. I don't even remember a lot.
Richmond Webb, yeah, dude's
So
amazing.
I don't know that. And also, it's tough for me. I can't recall.
It's not tough for me. Dude's a Hall of Fame level type of player. Like no doubt
All right,
about
this is
it.
his
It
first
should
year
be.
as a semifinalist, his first year eligible. So
I wouldn't be mad if he gets in his first year, but I would also understand it being his first year if he doesn't. He's got some time.
yeah,
Vince Wilfork, the fan favorite of the Patriots.
yep,
D tackle was. Now here's the hard part for a lot of people is if you're going to look up stats on Vince Wilfork, there's a very good chance he's not going to come close into the sacks.
right,
The dude was a nose tackle.
yes,
And the Patriots utilized Vince Wilfork as a space eater, a guy that would take on 2 blocks every single snap. And sometimes those guys that double teamed him couldn't even stop him at that point because he was so strong.
right,
Dude was a bull. He was nasty. He stopped a lot of running plays. He ate up blocks, and sometimes, on the rare occasion, would get a sack. But the guy was dominating as a nose tackle. Now, he's not going to really flash on the stat sheet at all,
right,
but if you remember how he played and what he was utilized as, I would say he's a Hall of Fame nose tackle.
yes,
Like,
right.
he's
That's
not
what I
going to
think so,
pop out
too.
on the stat sheet. And I know what everyone's going to go to that and say, where the hell is he? He's not even anywhere. But if you remember him playing, he did what he was asked to do so well
Right.
that it was Hall of Fame level.
Right. And again, I think some of it, if you look at it right now and the way the NFL is right now, you got a Dexter Lawrence and things like that. That's a D tackle that can come out and get those sacks and stuff like that. Different type of player than what
He is
Vince
different.
Wilfork was. And so you really needed to watch it.
Yeah,
like we
nose
did.
tackles are a dying breed.
Right, and he was dominating. He was huge, like you said, and they tried to double him, and he still get pressure in. So I think he's in automatically too. I mean,
The dude,
I think this is
the dude was basically 2 D
D
tackles put together.
Right.
He was just a giant guy.
Yes. So
Brings
I
us
think
to
that's a
Steve Wisniewski. He had a lot of Pro Bowls. I mean, and that was in the era where from 1989 to 2001, with the
where it
Raiders
kind
anyway.
of mattered at one point.
He was, where it mattered, where the committee voted, no fans. But was very dominating. Was known as one of the great guards at that time. Do I think he deserves to be in? This is kind of the thing that's hard for me. Is this guy did not play a long career?
Have a long career.
You know, like well, actually, no. Let me take that back because he did. You had fairly long.
Yeah, fairly long. Yeah.
But anyway, guy, it does deserve to be in the Hall of Fame. Do I think he'll get in? He might not get in. And because of when you look at this list, you if you've been paying attention from the beginning, this is difficult to go through and try to even narrow it down to 15 because that's what they have to do. The committee, the next step is to go from 25 to 15. Then it goes from 15 to, what is it, 10? Or
15
8?
to 10 and then to 5. And then you
15
get
to 10 and then to 5.
8, yeah,
and then that's
wanted
what you
to.
got.
8 is the most they can
So
do.
it's going to be tough. I don't think Wisniewski gets in. I don't think he's going to be given a legitimate shot to get in.
Right. For me, I am in agreement, and I'm thinking, again, just to make the 25 list. This is only his second time being nominated as a semifinalist.
I think
and
as a player, he deserves to be there.
Right,
but.
and I mean, first time before that was 2014. So obviously they're adding this guy because, again, he's been out there dangoing out for a while. It's got to be creeping on his. He's definitely been doing it for at least 11 years here, but he retired in 2001. He's on a 20-year creeper. So that's what they're looking at, I think, right here. So if he doesn't do it this year, then he would. Then I don't think he gets in at all. You know
Unless
what I mean?
it's a senior vote.
Senior vote, but again, if you've only been a semifinalist twice, I don't think so. You know what I'm saying?
That's where sometimes you get biased in the league when it comes to these votes too. So, he definitely is more deserving to get in, just like any of these other offensive linemen.
Yep.
I know people are going to be like, "Oh, it's just an offensive lineman," but there's no stats on them. I get it, but you got to understand how dominating these guys are. That's why they're even on this list. Look how many offensive linemen are on this list. Was it 5?
Yeah, there's
6?
a bunch on here.
5. There's 5 of them. Out of the 25, there's 5 already.
Mm-hmm.
That brings us to Darren Woodson, Mr. Dallas Cowboy himself at safety. Well, we already know how this goes with the safeties. Like, it gets really difficult to figure out, do they deserve to be in or not, because they are mixed in with all the corners. Unless they are stellar and amazing, you're not going to see these safeties anywhere near the top.
It's tough because, I mean, I thought he was a good player here. I see him down here in combo tackles, and I'm not going to count how many people that is, but I'm guessing 25, 26.
We'll say top 30.
Somewhere around there. Yeah, sure. He's 4 spots ahead of Champ Bailey, who is currently a Hall of Famer. At this point, Ryan Clark, to give you guys an idea, Darren Sharper in that same area. Devin McCourty's right there. If you, again, looking at company, that is right there for combo tackles. Sacks, again, probably the same type of area too. 2 under. Troy Polamalu. He's actually 1 less sack than Troy. But again, right around there, name wise, Tyrann Matthews right there too as well. James Hasty. So it's tough because he's surrounded by a couple of Hall of Famers. John Lynch. Sack wise with combo tackles. But he was like another kind of physical player. He was probably the one that created the whole intent to do that horse collar tackle foul, right? Wasn't it because the tackle that he did?
Right.
That the reason why they had that penalty now. So you guys can thank Darren Woodson.
Yeah, he did that on the Terrell Owens that got that. That's like kind of really when they did that, created that rule. T.O. got dragged down from behind as a Niner, I believe. Or an Eagle. It was one of those teams that he was on. And ever since then, they created that new rule, which, honestly, I get it. I get the rule. I do. I get it for safety reasons, all that. But it's another way to tackle the guy. They keep taking away from the defense what they can do.
Right. And I don't see him anywhere near on interceptions, stuff like that. So, I think he's a really good player. Again, it's tough for me because I like him.
He is the exact same situation as Rodney Harrison. Right. Darren Woodson was a in-the-box safety at the time. They both did their jobs very well as in-the-box safeties. Weren't asked to do a lot in terms of coverage, but they still got their job done. But in terms of Hall of Fame, one of the best, I just don't see it.
All right, we got a couple of comments in here. Sorry,
we got Mr. Javon Manners in the house. He goes, Bills, big dub. And yes, they got a big dub. Everybody rejoice. The Chiefs have lost. The Miami Dolphins organization is embracing this win, loving the fact that they are still the only team to ever go undefeated yet again.
That's right.
The Chiefs, they lose. They're going to reset and use this as a wake up call, like they did when the Raiders beat them last year. But the Bills, they finally overcome something that has been haunting them for quite some time. Now, can they do it again in the playoffs?
Right, and that's the thing too, because I think they had beat them in the regular season before, and then when it comes to postseason, there we go. So that's what needs to happen here, and I think the Harrison Butker injury, I think, is key for the Kansas City Chiefs here, because with the way that offense has been going early on, especially, they really needed him.
I mean, yeah, that's true. He is one of the best kickers in football, but the kicker that they just grabbed. He's doing okay. You know what I mean? He's making the field goals. Yeah. Mr. Mike Tackett, the OG know-it-all himself, has graced us with his presence.
Know-it-alls.
Says, happy hump day, guys. Just installed my new 65-inch TV in the living room. Nice, bro. Nothing better than the first thing to watch on it is Football on the No in 4K.
Oh, man. How do I look? Oh,
We're in 4K, baby.
Yikes.
Let's go.
Man.
Congratulations, buddy.
Now.
Damn, congrats.
Absolutely, definitely.
Mr. Mike
I tell you what, Mike, too, I'm really thinking that if we, on December 4th, I think it is, right? Maximum Football comes out. I really think the 10th?
December 10th.
December 10th. We should probably set it up somehow to do a live stream on this channel somehow. And we should play it. Like, he can walk it through us or whatever, and then we get on, and all three of us play like a match online or something like that.
That'd be cool.
I think we should try doing that sometime. We'll set it up. Definitely. You get to showcase the game right there. I don't know if you can technically or not, because I know licenses and stuff like that.
I might not be able to.
But whatever. You know what I mean? Streaming, playing it might be able to work. So I think that would be a fun idea, by the way.
Would be. Mr. Javon Manor says, this is the best version of Allen. He can do it again in the playoffs. He's telling you right now, as a Bills fan, best version of Josh Allen is going to do it again in the playoffs. He's pretty convinced. He's ready to go.
Again, for me, I would like to see him eliminate some of the turnovers, but I did notice in this game, especially when he's taking off running, he's not putting his body out there. He was sliding when he needed to slide, things like that, and still getting the plays they needed to, especially for that big run to break it off to get the game-winning touchdown. Yeah. That's key, I think, for Josh Allen here, especially with the Bills.
And last but not least, just to finish off the list, Mr. Marshall Yanda, guard/tackle for the Baltimore Ravens. This is his first time up at for the voting process of the Hall of Fame. Another dominating offensive lineman. That seems to be the the category that all these offensive linemen are in. They're all dominating guys. All deserve to be in the Hall of Fame. But not all of them will get in this year. So it'll be interesting to see what guys do make it, what guys don't, and I will be absolutely shocked if none of them make it.
What?
Yeah, I know. And we'll see, Joe. And again, we got time until they start breaking it down. But I think we did. We did eliminate it down to 15 ourselves in a sense, though.
In a sense, we talked our way through the list.
Right. Absolutely.
Yes,
Mike Tackett, what else has you got to say there?
All right, so it's all fair game. We can stream it all. We can make NFL teams too. Nice.
Ooh, there you go. We got to make the know-it-alls team, maybe.
That's right. We're gonna have to make the all-team know-it-all team.
There we go. Nice. I like that. All-team know-it-all team.
That's a long one, huh?
Yeah, that is a mouthful right there. Absolutely, but. All right, Joe.
Boy.
All right, what a mouthful, I guess, is too is, hey, if you guys haven't yet, I don't know if Javon has or not, but you know what? You guys subscribe to us on YouTube, man.
Yeah, guys.
We're getting there. We're only at like 102 members, I think, are subscribers right now.
We went over 100, which is a huge feat for us.
Yeah. Yeah, for now.
We've eclipsed 100. We did our punishments for reaching 100 subscribers.
Yes,
now,
we did.
The next one is going to have to be at 200.
Yes.
We want to get 200 subscribers in here. We've been, slowly chipping away at the subscription, task. But we need more help. Guys, maybe you can help us out. If you haven't done so already, head over to YouTube. Make sure you subscribe. Make sure you hit the thumbs up. It does go a long way. It's absolutely free. We're for a limited time only. Limited time only. We're not even charging for it. Just click the button. Right. Very simple. Share with all your friends and family members. Want you guys to be part of this thing and help us grow. If we get to 200 subscribers, guys, we're going to have to do something else for you guys. And we always kind of leave it up to you guys what you want us to do. Last time it was doing the Will Levis challenge, drinking mayo and coffee, and that was gross. I don't want to do that again. Maybe you guys can brainstorm and try to get us up to 200 and come up with something else.
Absolutely, Joe. So here we go. It's time to get into our picks.
Game picks.
And we're going to make it as quick and painless as possible for everybody.
Yes.
Because I know we got a late start here, too. And we already did our picks on the blindside blitz last night, too. So
That's right.
I don't think a whole lot has changed with some of these, but we never know. Sometimes we change our picks, after a night.
I'm not doing it again, Jim.
And here you go. Here's the standings right now. I've only got a 2-game lead here still with
That's
Joe. Joe and I have picked different teams a lot of times, a lot of games. Last week we picked all exactly the same. So we are where we are right now, but there's a lot of season left
We're
over.
at the triple digits now?
Deep. Yes,
Nice.
we're in triple digits. Yes.
I didn't think we would make it.
Well, that's who I was thinking of, too, last night was Stefania Bell. We were catching
right.
Stefania Bell.
Okay.
Because we had a really bad first couple of weeks this season.
There was a few weeks that were really
four
bad.
weeks, I think, that were bad.
Yeah.
But we're powering on. We're gonna finish strong here. So
That's right.
we're coming for Stefania Bell. We have something against Stefania Bell here, so we're going. All right, so here we go, Joe. Tomorrow night we've got the Cleveland Browns and the Pittsburgh Steelers. Pittsburgh, how about that? Pulling off a win against the Baltimore Ravens, barely with Chris Bosworth here with the game.
That's huge.
Field goal.
Huge.
Big time, especially for this team here, to be in the top of that division and get that win. Cleveland Browns, it's usually a good fight here with this team. These teams know each other, no matter
Right.
who it is. Kevin Stefanski could be potentially playing, for his job here.
I don't know. He's got a ringing endorsement.
But again,
the GM
there's a lot
spoke up.
I'm hearing, though, that, you
The
hear
GM
stories.
spoke up.
Right. So, I mean, you hear that from the owner, but then also you hear on
Here's the
Twitter
thing.
different
Here's the
stories.
thing.
So.
It's like Andrew Berry, the GM of the Browns, comes out, and I think it's only to deaden the noise.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? Because there's all this talk. Is Stefanski going? Is he staying? What are the Browns going to do? And Berry just kind of put it to bed. He's just like, you know what? No, Stefanski's our guy. He's staying. We're going to keep moving forward with him. We got a great relationship, blah, blah, blah. So that's kind of just to kill the media noise, I feel like. Just to, now, at the end of the year, I'm not going to be shocked if they decide to fire Kevin Stefanski because he's been there for numerous years. And where have the Browns gone? They still haven't, been able to push at all through the playoffs, even make it half the time. You know what I mean? So it might be time for a change.
It could be, and I know I saw a Bears fan even posted out there that if they do let him go, that they hope that Eberflus is let go, and then they want Kevin Stefanski right away.
Perfect. Go ahead, have him, and then you're gonna be pissed off at him, a year or two down
Still
the road,
not a quarterback whisperer,
and get rid of him too. So yeah,
there you go.
Back to the Steeler game. Give me the Steelers in this.
Right.
Let's be honest. Steelers came in with a huge win against Baltimore last week, but do they have a letdown after that? That's going to be concerning to me is that part. You exerted all your physicality, all your toughness, everything last week against Baltimore, and rightfully so, to scrape away a win. Now you go against the Browns, who everybody's thinking you're going to mop the floor with. Don't let this be a letdown game.
Right.
Steelers, come equipped, come ready. And beat up on the Browns.
Right. Yeah, exactly. I agree. All right, Minnesota Vikings and the Chicago Bears. Minnesota getting back to their winning ways. Sam Darnold spreading the ball around now, too. We saw an Addison appearance here. And I think they can get back to it here. Chicago, they're toppling. Again, a lot of people tried to get on that bandwagon. Like, the first 3 games, Caleb Williams sucked. And now look at him now. Look, he's throwing the ball to the receiver, and it's landing in the receiver's hands.
Oh, my
It is
God.
amazing stuff right now. This is the guy we talked about. And we don't see it, but it's some of the offensive coordinator. They're going after him, So you're seeing the fire sale starting to go here. And then also, that offensive line's been bad all season, though. I mean, he hasn't had much time at all. But then also with Caleb Williams running 10, 20 yards backwards,
kinda
scrambling
hard.
around, it is hard because then you do miss some blocks, and then you do get called for holding and blah, blah, blah.
It's hard to
So-
block people for like more than 5 seconds. So.
Right, and when that defense is always on the field, that good defense there, you start to struggle here. So I think more of the same here. Chicago, even though they're home, I think Minnesota has enough weapons here to get it done here. I like Minnesota.
Yeah, the Bears never really were in on them. Definitely thought the Bears royally screwed up when they took Caleb Williams number 1 overall, and I think the Bears are regretting it.
Yeah.
So the Vikings, they're not regretting their selection at quarterback. They went with Sam Darnold, which they came under a lot of scrutiny for it, and it's working out. I mean, they're doing their thing. So give me the Vikings. Give me Sam Darnold against the Bears. And the Bears lost to the Patriots.
Yes. That's
So
right.
I just got to say, like, the Vikings should have no problem, but these interdivision games sometimes are funky. But I still think the Vikings get the win.
Yeah, stranger things have happened. Detroit, after a throttling of the
Throttling.
of the, I've got all words
Jaguars.
coming out. The Jags last week go into
Got a question.
Indianapolis here.
Are the Jaguar fans okay? Like, is everybody still stable? Like, you guys are all right down
You
there?
guys got to check in. Yeah,
Yeah,
actually,
we
down there.
really need
Check
to
in
hear
on
from you.
Facebook. Are you guys okay?
Nod yes if you're okay.
All right, and again, as we're looking at coaching hot seats, Doug Peterson's got to be super hot there. Like, what's going on? You know, Detroit, Indianapolis, Richardson back in. They did have some life last week, but
Yeah.
you know, the Detroit Lions, they're too powerful right now. Even though the Colts, I could see Detroit kind of downplaying the Colts a little bit and make one of those tighter games like Detroit does sometimes. It's not going to be a throttling, I think, of like they did last week, but I still got Detroit in this one.
Yeah, you know, this is one of those games where I just think that for the Lions, they got to continue what they're doing. They just can't just assume, like, when they get off the bus now and they're going to face a team like the Colts, that this is going to be easy. This is no problem. We just got to show up and we're going to get these wins against these type of teams that are just barely trying to get to 500 here. Give me the Lions all day long. Like, there's really not much of a conversation. The Colts, it was nice that Richardson looked better last week, but now you're going to be facing the best team right now in football. And I don't think it's going to bode well for
that
them.
doesn't bode well.
So give me the Lions and their high-octane offense and their defense starting to play way better. They're super dangerous.
All right, next we got the New England Patriots and the Miami Dolphins. Miami at home, they always play well against the Patriots here at home. And you look at the two teams, one's rebuilding, one is just getting healthy at the quarterback position here in Tua. They've got him back here, so now Tyreek Hill and all those guys are going to do a hell of a lot better. The weapons are so much better on that team other than the New England Patriots. But with Drake May and what he's been trying to do with this team, I wouldn't be surprised if they keep it close early on, but then Miami pulls away. I still like the Miami Dolphins.
Yeah, Miami, they're another team that is kind of just starting to get a little bit healthier. So things are looking good for them. And now that Tua's back at the helm, this offense is starting to get back on track. As well, the defense starting to play better too, which is kind of weird. All of a sudden they woke up with that. But the Patriots, again, they're rebuilding. Drake May, we all know that they are looking forward to the offseason to try to add maybe another number one wide receiver or something like that, or at least help at the offensive line. But until then, they're going to have to finish these games out. Give me the Dolphins. I think the Dolphins have to win this game, and they should win this game.
Next, we got the Tampa Bay Buccaneers and the New York Football Giants. Giants go to Tommy Cutlets. Tommy DeVito there is going to be the starter here. They move on from Daniel Jones, so a lot of drama with that, which we've been dealing with here in New York. And Tampa Bay coming off that bye week. I think that was bigger rest for Mike Evans, but then also Baker Mayfield, because he's been doing a lot, man. He had to have been tired.
Doing everything.
He must have been really hitting the massage, in his week off here. So now he's ready to come back. He's been putting this team on his shoulders. They're talking about Mike Evans still being able to come back this season or this week. So let's look for that, see if he can.
He'll be back this week.
Well, that's big for them because, again, they've been really keeping close with some of these really, good teams. Just not enough to get it done. They've had a losing streak here. I see them turning around here against the New York Giants. I'm taking Tampa Bay easy.
For the Buccaneers, I mean, the one kind of concern I would say is their left tackle, Tristan Wirfs.
Yeah.
It sounds like he's going to be a game-time decision whether he can play or not. If he's not in there, that side of the ball could be a weakness that the Giants could exploit, and rightfully so. But I don't think it's going to be enough. This offense for the Buccaneers has been playing very, very good football. Whether they have their starting receivers or not, they're figuring some things out to score. Yeah. It's just the defense has got to play catch-up now. Can they do that? Can they wake up? Giants, they got a decent defense. I feel like this is going to be a closer game than anticipated. But I think the Buccaneers will edge him out nonetheless.
All right, next, the Dallas Cowboys and the Washington Commanders. Dallas lost again. Cooper Rush at the helm here for them. They did get Micah Parsons back, and he was getting some pressures last week, which was very good for them. You see the difference there, but
Yeah,
a lot of
enough,
injuries, especially last week. They just kept Zach Martin went down for. I mean, everybody was dropping like flies for them, and that's tough for them, especially when they don't even have a running game here. So now you have no offensive line to protect your quarterback, and you saw the difference in that game last week too. I really feel like they should just pull the trigger and put Trey Lance out there. I know it sucks you to throw him out there to the Wolves, but see what he's got. He has some mobility. Maybe he can make some plays that Cooper Rush really isn't going to do for you right now. It's something different. And at least see what you got. You went and traded for him, so you might as well see what you got here. If you know you think that the rest of the season is kind of doomed here, but they still kind of have a shot though. Still, I mean they're only a game or so out away from Washington, but I just think overall Washington has the better, healthier team right now, and Jaden Daniels at the helm. Washington lost a couple of close ones. I think they come back here and they get a win here against the Dallas Cowboys.
Let's not give the Cowboy fans hope. They're done. They're just done. This team is just not playing good football. They can't score. They can't put up points. Their starting quarterback is now done for the year. Like, it's over.
It's funny to see them on social media now. I actually saw a Dallas Cowboy fan who's a diehard's like, oh, I was able to watch a Dallas Cowboy game and not feel so frustrated or angst or whatever, and just kind of watch it and had no care.
Right.
I'm like, well, thank you very much. Now you know what it's like to be a Giants fan, because you're just like, your season's over already. So
and
it
a Raiders fan
anymore. So yeah,
Raiders are in the same boat. So
how
does
it feel? Right,
it's over.
So anyway, sorry, Joe.
Yeah, you know, Commanders all day long in this one. Jaden Daniels, this team is going to get this W. They're going to get right back into this division race. And and it's interesting too, because the rest of their schedule is not very difficult either for the Commanders. So maybe they can make a run for this division and maybe possibly beat out the Eagles. That's starting to play better.
All right, here we go. We got the Kansas City Chiefs and the Carolina Panthers. Looks like Bryce Young's playing a little better for this team here too, but again,
which is weird how this works.
Yeah, in a sense, maybe it is. You bench the guy for a couple weeks, then hey, come back, and now he's learned his lesson. But I think it was just the right moment and right teams too that he's been playing though too as well. I mean, come on, look at the Giants here, what they've been doing. Kansas City Chiefs. They haven't been playing their best football right now, but still, they have a lot of talent here. This isn't going to be even close here. I like the Kansas City Chiefs on this one.
Yeah, it sounds like Isaiah Pacheco is on the brink of coming back. He may or may not be back this week, but most likely he'll be back the following week, so they get themselves another guy. Juju Smith-Schuster, a full go this week in practice so far. Sounds like he'll be returning back. So it sounds like they're starting to get guys back. Also, an update on Marquise Brown, who's been out for quite some time. He's making good progress on his recovery from mid-season shoulder surgery. So that's, and we all know he's not coming back this year, but it's just a little bit of an update for the Chiefs fans out there, how he's doing. And for the Panthers, even though they've surprised some people, the last couple of weeks or whatnot, what they were able to do as far as, scoring points and in Bryce Young now being at the quarterback spot and doing his thing. This is going to be a tough matchup for him. Very tough challenge for him against the Chiefs. And Jim pointed out that the offense is struggling. Like, it really is. It's not the same type of Chiefs team that we normally see every year. So for the first time, you never know who could beat the Chiefs. The Bills were able to do it last week, but we kind of saw that coming. That would have been the only game we saw that the Chiefs could kind of give that up to. But for the Chiefs, I think there's no doubt about it. Their defense alone against the Panthers will get them the win.
Mm-hmm. And next, the Tennessee Titans and the Houston Texans. Houston winning, but then still at times it looks like they're not as dominant as I think with some of these games that they could be or something like that. So maybe we saw what we saw last year, and they're like, oh, they're going to get even better than that this year. And this year's kind of been up and down, but they have been dealing with injuries, especially at the wide receiver position. But everybody's getting back healthy here. Joe Mixon is rolling too. He was injured for a time, but he's back. He's rolling too as well. So I think they're hitting their stride here. Tennessee, Will Levis back in the mix here, so they're looking a little better, but it's not a very good team, So going against the Texans here at home, they just showed the Dallas Cowboys who's boss in Texas. So here they are at home. They're going to shine against the Tennessee Titans.
Yeah, Will Levis had a pretty decent week last week, but not enough to get the win. The Texans, on the other hand, you mentioned how they weren't as impressive, but that was a lot of the reason why was because they were missing key components in their offense, as well as the offensive line, as well as their defensive players. So they kind of went through a period of adjustment with the injuries and trying to balance them out. But now that they're starting to get much healthier, they got their number one option back in Nico Collins last week. You saw the difference in that, along with a healthy Joe Mixon, what he was able to do. This Texans team right now, and they don't need Diggs. They really don't.
Right, yeah.
So having Collins, having the Tank Dell, having Dalton Schultz, having now Joe Mixon in the backfield, that's all they really need. Watch for this team to kind of make this turn in the season. This will be their turning point of the season where they kind of start to put wins together. It starts here with the Titans. Give me the Texans.
All right. Next, we've got the Denver Broncos and the Las Vegas Raiders. Are you going to start Gardner Minshew again?
Wait, I thought the Raiders were playing a high school team this week.
They might as well. They might have dropped out
Jesus.
to
What happened here?
Class A, divisional,
I'm pretty
Division Two.
I'm pretty sure Gardner Minshew has entered the transfer portal.
Yes, nice.
Out of Vegas, is going to go play for the Miami Hurricanes or something. I don't know.
They're the first team to be put into the flag league, so
That's right.
yeah, Denver, they're getting better. I mean, look at that defense. That's always been good. But now you're seeing Bo Nix kind of come into his own here with this offense. And now they're kind of that scary kind of team creeping up on people. So they're
doing it with their defense too.
Oh, yeah,
their defense is one of the best defenses in football.
But
the Chiefs found out how difficult they can be, and now that Bo Nix, throughout the season, every single week has been getting, slowly and steadily getting better every single week as a rookie quarterback. You're seeing him grow before your eyes. Broncos fans are a little bit more excited than they were in week one, and they're starting to see, all the hard work paying off right now. Broncos against the Raiders, doesn't matter where they're playing. They could be playing at the Alamo Bowl, but the Broncos are going to win.
All right, here we go. San Francisco 49ers, Green Bay Packers. This one is getting more intriguing by the day with injuries.
Intriguing by the day.
Oh, my gosh, Joe. Yes, Brock Purdy banged up. Kittle banged up. Green Bay, the way they've been playing up and down. This is a tough one for me, Joe. I almost feel like flipping a coin.
Oh, you're going to flip? Are you going to flip?
I'm not going to flip my pick,
your pick?
though, too. So I think Brock Purdy's still playing. He's going to play it. Those guys are going to play through it. But,
I mean, you're looking at the first day of practice.
Yeah.
A lot of times, a lot of veterans get rest on the first day anyway.
But Green Bay Packers, they're kind of up and down. At least with Jordan Love, his play is kind of suspect at times. So if he makes a few mistakes in this one, it could bite him on this. But I think I'm just going to trust my gut with this one and go with the San Francisco 49ers.
Yeah, I'm going to go with the 49ers. I think last week with Seattle doing what they were able to do, I think it was just kind of one of those things where, hold on, my bad. I'm jumping to another game. The 49ers.
Yeah.
So with the 49ers, even though this week, it's kind of like a rest day for a lot of vets for them. The Packers, on the other hand, they've been up and down. Jordan Love's been up and down. I don't even know what's going on with that guy.
Yeah.
Maybe he needs to smoke weed before a game or something. He just needs to chill the fuck out.
Yeah,
I just don't understand what's happening. Is he getting too much anxiety before the drive or something?
I don't know.
It's just
it
weird.
Like he was very
it's
cool,
so
collect last season.
Weird.
So it seemed like he had that issue.
But man, I don't know what we're gonna get out of the Packers this week. I know it's in Green Bay, tough place to play. San Francisco, even though they're a little bit banged up, at least for today, we'll have to see how the rest of the week plays out. But I think they're going to have their weapons. They didn't have George Kittle last week. So it sounds by all indicators that he's going to be ready to go this week, which is going to be just another weapon out there. This is going to be a tough game, no doubt about it, for both clubs. But I still going to lean towards the 49ers to get this win.
All right, here we go. The Arizona Cardinals and
As
the
I was
Seattle
saying, Jim.
Seahawks. Yes. Well, I think you brought up Seattle because Seattle had played San Francisco last week, and you were saying how disappointed you were kind of with San Francisco. With
I was, but I didn't want to get too much on the Seattle topic, so I just stopped.
I got you. So here, why don't you take off where you left?
But yeah, so the 12th man in Seattle, very tough place to play as well. The Seahawks were able to beat the 49ers last week. I think that was kind of just one of those weird weeks in the NFL. Didn't see that coming. I thought Seattle would lose that game. But this might be the game. This is the game that they're going to lose. I just think that the Arizona Cardinals, a lot of people are still sleeping on them, and they've been playing very good football all throughout the season, to my surprise. I can't believe that the defense is playing as well as they are, the offense with Kyler Murray. And when we looked at this roster initially and before week 1, we're like, okay, cool. They got a number 1 option. They got Marvin Harrison Jr. Great. Trey McBride in his second year. Cool. They got their backfield. They drafted Trey Benson. They have James Conner. Awesome. Their offensive line looked a little weak. So we're like, let's temper expectations. Maybe this team isn't ready to win right now. I don't think they're going to win very many games, and they're proving me wrong right now. They are just overachieving as a football team. I think they continue to do so. They've been playing everybody very tough. I think they play the Seattle Seahawks tough, and they get a W. Yeah,
this one's tough for me again because I'm not exactly sold on Arizona. I am
surprised
at what they're doing. I get that, and they have pulled out some wins, and which is impressive. But Seattle, I think, is one of those teams that seem kind of weird. Same type of thing. Dr. Jekyll, Mr. Hyde. We talked about it last week. This one, I think they get that high off of beating the 49ers here. They are at home. I think even talent-wise, I like what they have in the wide receiver position, and I think Geno Smith can eliminate the mistakes enough to get out a win here in Seattle. I'm going to go with Seattle on this one.
Yeah, or Geno's just going to revert back to what he was been doing this season.
He could be. Yes. Here we go. So next we got the Philadelphia Eagles and the Los Angeles Rams. Joe, what do you got?
Tough one right there. That's what I got. This is a really tough game to pick. Rams with Puka Nacua and Kupp, definitely completely different type of offense. They're just way more impactful. And the fact that Kyron Williams is having one hell of a season for them as a running back. Got the completely healthy offensive line, which kind of changes everything up right now for the Rams. I would normally just kind of say ringing endorsement, Eagles all the way. There's not much stopping them. And the fact that Saquon Barkley running like he is just absolutely terrifying for any team that has to defend against him. I'm going to go with an upset here, though. I'm going to go with the Rams because now that they are 100% healthy, I feel like they're going to give the Eagles all they can handle and just enough to get a win.
Yeah, I'm going to go the opposite here again. I think Philadelphia, yes, they've had some tough, hard-fought games here, but I also think, like I've said all season, the whole offense runs around Saquon Barkley, and he's shown that he can't be stopped like week to week. And I know that the Rams defense has played good too. Jared Verse looking right to be the defensive player of the year potentially. Offensive rookie of the year, defensive rookie of the year. But I think Philadelphia, just to have more firepower at this point than Los Angeles. So I'm going to go with Philadelphia on this one. All right, finally get into Baltimore and the Chargers here on Monday Night Football. Baltimore just barely losing out in that last game here. Couldn't get the 2-point conversion here with Lamar Jackson. The Chargers starting out hot last week and then let the Cincinnati Bengals right back in it. And then a kicking debacle in that game and then edged it out barely at the end here. They're going to have a harder time here, I think, though, against the Baltimore Ravens here. Baltimore wants to come back here strong, get a win. I think they are. I think they're going to get a win here against the Chargers here. I like Baltimore.
Yeah, I mean, how do you categorize this game? Because you got Jim versus John. It's brother versus brother.
Yeah, that's
Jim and John.
Jim and the Harbaugh game, right?
Or is it the Harbaugh Bowl, or is it the Roman, Surgeons, game? Because Greg Roman wants
Roman versus Monk.
Yeah, Roman versus Monk. There we go. Sounds like a law firm,
right?
Roman. But I gotta say, I think this is a very interesting game because there's a lot of relationships involved here. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And there's a lot of guys that understand the football minds behind the man, and how each team likes to call. There's so much familiarity that it makes this game so intriguing.
Dobbins,
the fact that you got J.K. Dobbins, formerly a Raven, couldn't make it work there because he was always injured. Now he's healthy. I don't know how that happened, but years later, now the guy manages to stay healthy for the Chargers. So a lot of storylines flowing through this one, and I really do appreciate NFL putting this in as a primetime game. But Chargers pulled off a good win last week. Good on them. I think this is going to be a very, very difficult matchup for both clubs. They're both playing good football. I just tend to lean towards the Ravens right now because the playmaking ability of Lamar Jackson and what he's been able to do with Derrick Henry in that backfield is just very difficult to stop. Yes, the Steelers managed to do just enough to get the win last week against them, but I think the Ravens are looking to get back on track here. And even though whatever it takes type of mentality, they're going to try to get the win here. Give me the Ravens.
All right, there you go. There's the peaks for Week 12 already upon us here, Joe. It is cruising right along, going fast.
It is cruising.
It's going to be Thanksgiving next week. So next week's show, we're going to have our Thanksgiving show. Yeah, we're going to do the my list again. Who knows what my category will be again, but we're going to do a list. We're going to celebrate. We're going to be thankful for things.
For the football season.
Yeah, and we're going to get a Black Friday game next week too, Joe. So
yeah, I'm not
Black
thrilled
Friday,
about that one.
Yeah, it's going to be your Raiders, right?
Yeah, unfortunately.
Raiders Chiefs, right?
Yeah,
Black
unfortunately.
On what is it going to be? Is it on Amazon? What is it going to be?
Oh, I think it's on. It's on like an exclusive.
Yeah.
I think it's Amazon.
Is it?
I think it's Amazon.
Amazon Black Friday game, I think so.
Yep.
Yeah, new things coming. Netflix is going to have the Christmas game, so it's that season, ladies and gentlemen. Here we go. The colder weather is going to be coming up here in the north, and
right.
yeah, we got the holidays coming up. So, Joe, tell everybody how they can spread some holiday cheer right now.
I'll just tell you what I'm thankful for right now. I'm thankful for you guys out there, all you know-it-alls, you sexy know-it-alls out there.
Use drugs.
Thank you guys so much for giving us support. I mean,
Hashtag
you make doing this show so much fun when you guys light up the chat box and you give us all these, your opinions, your questions, whatever. Keep it flowing every single week, every Wednesday night. Just come right here. This is the one-stop place you need to go. The best interactive NFL talk show there is out there. This is the only place you need to come. You're more than welcome to come every single week. We're going to share some knowledge. We want you guys to do the same thing. Maybe give us your opinions, your answers to everything that we're going to talk about. But the most precious thing I need for you to do is to get your family, your friends, anybody that loves the NFL talk, head over to YouTube for us. Just head over there. Even if you even if it's like a drive-by, smash the button for the subscription. It's totally free. Hit the thumbs up. Share it to all your family and friends. And don't forget to comment every week. Just don't forget. Comment down below. We're going to give you a shout out. We're going to get involved in this talk show of ours. And let's do it every single week. Return.
I'm going to hit every shot of the buff. Go ahead. Dropping that one. All right, thank you so much, everybody, for joining us.
Yes, sir.
We will see you guys next week.
Later.
Join us next week from 8 till 10 Wednesday night for more Football on the Know with Jim and Joe.